like we say, what is actually denial of service attack. uh, it's actually it is an attack that attacker does on a user. For example, where a user is unable to access some services. For example, if he want to access some website, for example, services from a website, and due to the denial of service attack, he cannot access particular service. So that is actually called as a distributed denial of service attack. So they are if we uh, if we if we are going to design a particular model to prevent the system from such type of attacks, then we actually design a attack model as well, or we say that we design a threat model as well. So a threat model is the type of model where we design that from where the attacker can attack to the system. For example, uh, there could be different directions from where an attacker take to the system, or from where an attacker can enter into the system. So we say that, so we whenever we design a particular model to prevent the system from an attacker, first we design a threat model for that. Means from where the attacker can attack the system, there could be the different threats, there could be different attacks uh, uh, through which the attacker can enter into the system. So we will design that model, and after that we will uh, consider every thread, or for example we will look at every attack, that how the attacker has entered into the system, how the attacker has attacked to the system. Then we will be able to design a model for to prevent the attacker to damage the system. So in this way we will design a particular model for attacking to the system, and we can also design a model for preventing the system from damaging the further attack to the system. And then we have, like for example, there are different types of denial of service attacks, which are given here. For example, like for example, they previously the attackers has tried to attack different web applications or websites, like for example Yahoo, Amazon, eBay, Microsoft. They use different types of attacks. So they use like a denial of service attack, or distributed denial of service attacks on those websites, or different internet services like DNS servers. So they apply different attacks. Uh, they can apply different attacks on different networks. They can apply different attacks on different websites. So these are actually the examples are given here, uh, uh, where the attacker has attacked to the system. So it could be the website, it could be a web application, it could be a web service, for example, or it could be a distributed computers, a distributed system, like the example of the DNS servers. So they can apply different attacks on those systems, and when particular service is going to be accessed in those system and the user is unable to access that service, that means it is a type of a denial of service attack. And they are basically two categories of such type of attacks here. For example, the attacks which comes in a category called as a flooding attack. It consists of different types of attacks, like point-to-point attacks, like TCP, UDP, ICMP flooding attacks, SIMRF attacks, and other type of distributed attacks. And they are also called the hierarchical type of attacks. And then there are other types of attacks, like they are called as corruption attacks. So we will discuss these different attacks uh, when we proceed the lecture, that how these different attacks are uh, applied by the attacker, and how we can prevent such type of attack from attacking to the system. For example, there's a example is given here, which is called a SIMA fatigue, where there is a, denial of service attack is used. So in this type of attack, for example, the attacker sends a request. For example, there's a um, ICMP request to the server or to different users, and then it broadcast different messages to the different systems or to the different users. For example, then they send a particular response to the actual user. So, for example, here, if the particular request is sent it by by the, for example, system that is sent it that it cannot be handled. So many requests are sent it to the system, for example, the user, that he cannot handle those requests at a time. So that means when another request goes to be handled by that particular server or that particular system, that then we cannot be able to respond that. That means it is actually a type of a denial of service attack, and that is actually comes in the category of SIMA attack. So in this way, the attacker can attack to the system, and such type of attacks which are used by the attacker are called as SIMA attack, or for example, they are also called as a point-to-point attacks. And then we have other type of attacks, like they are called as a distributed denial of service attacks. For example, they are in the system, as we discussed, they form a network, they form a hierarchical network, for example, uh, uh, where different services are distributed to different systems. For example, this figure further explains that how the distributed denial of service is applied by the taker. For example, there is a system here that is a victim, and there is a taker here. It's going to uh, perform the take. It's going to launch an attack to the system. For example, here there's a there are the systems in between them, which are called the handlers, and they are the systems which are called agents. For example, here, for example, what the taker does is actually they install different services on every individual system in the network, and then every system launch an attack to the system, which is called as a victim here. For example, here they install different services here to the systems, and these systems are called as agents, for example. And when when it launched different services to those systems, and then it uh, uh, then it attack to the actual system, which is called the victim here. So in this way, this such type of uh, attacks are called a distributed type of attacks, where the different services are installed at the different systems, and from where they launch the attack to a system, or to a victim, or for example to a network, for example. So why they are called distributed? Because each attack is actually launched to every system, and then every system is actually uh, attacking to the victim, for example, launching an attack to other system. So that's why we say that these are actually type of attacks which are called distributed denial of service attacks. Now, the example of distributed denial of service attack is, for example, there's a Trino attack. It was launched in August 1999. So it infected about more than 2,000 systems. Um, it is actually used by uh, by uh, by an attacker to attack to the system, and then the, this type of attack was like that was applied by on a network, and that consists of, for example, there's a network of the University of Minnesota. So it consists of the different systems installed in the university, for example, in that university, and it infected about more than 2,000 systems in about 3 days. So such type of attacks are the example of the distributed denial of service attack. And then we have in such type of attack, we say that they are the distributed denial of service attack. So they actually use a distributed type of network. Means, for example, there's an attacker, and they can use handlers in between them, which manage different types of attacks, and they install different services on different systems which are in the network. And these different systems which are in the network are called as agents, where they install different services. And when they install different services, so they on different systems in the network, so they launch the attack uh, on a network or on a system, for example. So we say that that's why we say that it's a type of distributed network, and it's a type of distributed denial of service attack, because they are the they are launched by a distributed network, and they are handled by a distributed network, and they are applied on a system, and they may be applied on a network, for example. So we say that such type of attack are example of the distributed denial of service attack. For example, here uh, there's a possibility that if an attacker is going to take a system, so he may try to spoof, for example, source address, for example. What does mean by spoofing the source address? Means he may be acting as a he's a legitimate user, or, for example, he may be acting as a he's in the network, and he's a legitimate user. He may spoof, or he may masquerade the address of the a legitimate user, and then he applied the take on a network. So that's why we say that. So because whenever an attacker try uh, to attack to a system, so it first of all, he tries to hide its identity, for example, or he can use the address of another system which is a legitimate system, or which is a legitimate user, and then he attack to the system, so that he should not be he cannot be easily detected by the user, by the intrusion detection system. So he tries to his identity by using the address of other system, or by using by masquerading the user, for example, by spoofing the address. So in this way, he can attack the system and can hide its identity. And there are different dynamics of the different type of attack. Like, for example, it can be send it as we have discussed, if there's a distributed network, so there are the different agents are involved here to launch different attacks on the system. It have a different rate of attack, for example. For example, it could have a constant rate of attack, or it could have a variable rate of attack, for example. So it attack to the system constantly. For example, it particular strain, for example, or it can vary its attack to the system, for example. So it may change. It can vary. For sometimes it damage more, or sometimes it damage less. So in this way, a taker can apply different variations here to apply different types of attacks, or it can constantly apply at the same strain, or it can, for example, increase the damage, or it can decrease the damage, for example. So in this way, he can fluctuate between different rates, different variations of the type of attack, for example. So it can damage more, or it can damage less, for example. It can apply more attacks, or it can apply less attacks. So such type of variations can be used by the attacker to attack the system. And then uh, we further discuss about other types of attacks, which are called as a distributed type of attacks. So we have discussed so far what are the different attacks, like for example, point-to-point attacks, where an attacker attack to the system. There's a there's there's a single system, and it attacks to other single system. So such type of attack is a point-to-point attack. And when there's a attacker tries to attack to the distributed system, and such type of attack is actually called the distributed attack. So if you have any question up to now, you can ask. So
सर
have
ये
you
एक सर ये एक ही अटैक हम अलग अलग टेक्निक से कर सकते हैं, और इसके अलावा सर आपने ऊपर एक टर्म आई थी टेक्सोनोमी, सर इसका मतलब बताइएगा टेक्सोनोमी का।
uh, this is actually, we can say, taxonomy is like a technical terminology which is used for the particular type of attack. For example, here we say that if we are using a thread model, and the other different threads are designed here, there's these different threads are taken to the system. So we how we say that which type of attacks are these, and we which type of threads are these. So we say that in types of technically we say that that is actually uh, these are threats, or these are different attacks which are attacking to the system. It could be in different forms, like for example, it can consume a network connectivity or bandwidth, for example, or it can apply different attacks through different packets, for example, which are sent from the sender to the receiver, and it can modify the packet, and it can, for example, masquerade the address into the packet, for example. So these are we can say different technical terms, which are technical explanations about those type of attacks, which we design or which we model whenever we design any type of threat model, or when we design any type of attack model. Okay.
ओके सर।
Sir,
Yes.
sir, what is the means by legitimate user, sir?
uh, Legitimate user here, that means it is an authorized user. So that is the user which is given the permission, which is given the permission to access to the system, which is given different permissions to access the system, or to use the system, or to use the network.
Okay, sir. And sir, what is the mean by the victim, sir?
Victim here means that is the system, or that is the network which is attacked by the attacker, or we can say it is a target which is attacked by the attacker. where the attacker launch it attack. Either it could be a user, or it could be a system, for example, or it could be a network. So that is a you can say system, or that is an entity where an attacker is going to apply attack.
Okay,
सर
sir.
सर क्या हम लोग मैक एड्रेस को भी स्पूफ कर सकते हैं सर, क्योंकि मैक एड्रेस तो डिवाइस का अपना फिजिकल एड्रेस होता है, तो सर क्या उसकी भी स्पूफिंग पॉसिबल है सर? आईपी एड्रेस की तो आपने भी बताई, पर क्या मैक एड्रेस की स्पूफिंग पॉसिबल है?
Actually, whenever any type of attack it is launched, for example, it is done with the help of the IP address. So mostly the IP address is used to send the packets to other system. That's why we say that the attacker is spoofing the IP address. There's a possibility that he can also spoof the make address, but mostly the different attacks are launched by spoofing the IP address.
ओके सर.
Sir, how can we protect ourselves from these attacks?
Means you are saying that your system
Yes,
how,
sir.
actually we have different methods can be applied. For example, we can apply different intrusion detection. So as we are also doing some other methods to secure the system. For example, we are using some antiviruses, for example. So they detect different intrusions or different attacks into the system. Or for example, by different means we can apply different privileges. For example, if any system or any user want to access our system, we log or we look at different features of that particular user, for example. So if for example that particular user should be given an access to our system or not, so we have to look at different features of that system, different privileges given to that system. For example, we we should not give an administrative privilege to an unknown user, for example, to access different services of our system. Or for example, we have to look at different logs generated into the system, that either particular users which are accessing to our system, so they are accessing particular services. So those particular services are critical services or not. So if they are the critical services, and then we should prevent those services which should not be accessed by the user, which is an authorized user. So if we are in the network, for example, if any system want to, or any user want to access our services, so we should give him access or allow him before analyzing different features of that particular system or particular user. For example, either if any user is going to access our system, so we should not giving him some privileges like that he can modify, or he can change, or he can launch some services, or some you can say which can run in background, for example, and it can consume the power of our system. So in this way, we should carefully give the particular privileges to other users which are going to access the system. And then we can also have different antiviruses installed, so they can constantly monitor different services which are coming into the system. And then we should prevent the services which are not, which are, for example, intended to damage our system. So in this way, these are the different methods which can be applied by the user to protect the system. Okay.
Yes, sir. Sir, sir, why we called Simon as a point-to-point attack, sir?
Simurf attack.
Yes, sir. Why we call it a point-to-point attack, sir?
Why we call it's because point to point attack, we say that it is, for example, it is there's an attacker and there's a, for example, a victim, for example, or there's a target, for example. There's a
Yes, sir.
there's a attacker which is a single system, and there's a target which is a for example a single system. So they are the attacker takes to another system, which is in the form of a system or single system, for example. So that's why we say it is a type of a point-to-point attack. So there's a it's a like there's a taker and there's a target or there's a victim. So a taker attacks the other system, and we say that a taker is also we can say a single system or point, and target is also a single system or point, and a taker take to the target or to the victim.
Sir, how we
Sir?
protect SY and floating attack, sir?
मैं पढ़ाने तो दे
You mean flooding attack?
Sir, SY and floating attack, how we protect these attacks from the system, sir?
Which type of attack?
Sir, SY and floating attack.
Flooding attack, you mean?
Yes, sir.
So these are actually the attacks can be protect. We can say we can protect the system from attacking such type of attacks by using different intrusion detection methods. Like for example, we can use different intrusion detection systems. So there are the different systems can be used or can be installed on a network, for example, or on a system to defend the system from further attacking to the system. So we say that in they could it depends on the type of attack, that what type of attack is that. So we can prevent the attacker from attacking the system by using different systems. Like for example, there are the systems are also available which are used to detect the particular intrusion, for example, and there are also the systems are also available uh, which can detect the system, and then it can also prevent the system from further attacking to the system. So there are the different functions can be used by the attacker to launch different attacks, and there are the different methods which can be used by the user or by, for example, security expert to defend the system or to protect the system from attacking by the attacker. So they can have a different services, or they can have different systems which can be used by them to protect the system from attacking or from damaging.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
सर डिनायल ऑफ सर्विस अटैक सर एक्टिव अटैक है या पैसिव टाइप ऑफ अटैक है सर
Denial of service attack is we say that it's because it is generally in the category of the active type of attacks. So it could be a passive attack, but it is generally a active type of attack. So as far as the passive attacks are concerned, which are, for example, just gets information from the network or from a system, and then it uses that information. And active type of attacks are such type of attack where it can also modify some data or some you can say data which is sent from sender to the receiver. So here actually we are having different services and these different services can be used by the attacker. And they use the attacker use these services in a way that the actual user which cannot be able to access that particular service. So that means it is going to modify some configurations, or it going to modify some access of the service, or it is going to modify some privileges to access those particular services. So that's why we say that it is a type of activity.
Sir,
ओके सर इंग्लिश में बोलता है
sir, dogs attacks increase sophistication. What is the mean by this, sir?
Why?
The dogs attacks increase frequency, security, sophistication, sir. What is the mean by this, sir?
It's
Sir, what is the mean by sophistication?
it's actually the example of different type of attacks are given here. So we can give an example of particular attack. So that is why we say that it could be a denial of service attack, or it could be a distributed denial of service attack.